We're going to go ahead and start this here. This kind of dovetails into the presentation that I did about a month or so ago, relevant to the status of inventory items. And we talked about what used meant, what installed meant, and all that kind of good stuff. And I think I made a comment in passing that this import scanning feature should be something we should cover in a future session. So here we are. So we're going to cover this today. It shouldn't be too long, but I think if you use that prior presentation and this one together, you get a pretty good idea of what it takes to manage inventory in ActionFlow. So here we go. We're going to cover the topic of the actual import itself, of which, just real clear to note here, it's for serialized inventory only. There is no import scanning of any type with non-serialized inventory. We're going to talk about how we can use the scan session to update our bin locations and status. And then more importantly, how do we evaluate the scan after we've done it? So just doing the scan is only a small piece of the total puzzle. And there's lots more to do once you get it done. We're going to talk about if we find inventory that that needs to be set to a status of lost, how we do that at the same time. We're going to talk about scan cycle counts. How often do you need to do them? What is the implication of doing them on a frequent basis versus every now and then? Talk a little bit about the hardware that we recommend, and finally some reports that you would want to use to tie things out after you're done. So that's kind of the components we're going to look at here. So let's take a look at what we're going to do here when we scan. So we're going to use, you'll see later on when we talk about the hardware, there's one particular type of scanner that we use particularly for these count sessions, which is different than the scanner that we'd use on the mobile app if we're doing just inventory movement from one bin location to the other, which is typically managed by our material handlers. So we're going to talk here specifically about taking our scanner, going out in the yard, and scanning a section, subsection, or possibly the entire inventory at one go. So what we recommend is that after you do your scan session, you're going to open up a text file. And so we're suggesting something like Word, Notepad, or Word, or Excel. And you're going to do your initial import into one of these three applications. Then you're going to go ahead and save that scan session so that you have a backup. Because once you have dumped the scan from the scanner into one of these three applications, the scanner basically is now empty. In other words, you're not going to quickly retrieve it. So if you had a situation where you lost that scan session and it was a really big one, unfortunately, you'd have to do it kind of from ground zero. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. So here you can see we've got some Word documents, some text files in the upper section, just in my Explorer window here, File Explorer. And you can see we've got these various scan sessions. And I did ask one of my clients who kind of gave permission to use their database to do some scans for me. So we're actually going to work these scans here in a moment. But basically, we've got a number of scan sessions. He did the A bins, and then the B bins, the C bins, and then the D bins. So I asked him to do 4 sets of different scans, each from each of those bin locations. So you can see in the bottom section here, you can see in my text file, I'm just using Notepad here, you can see what the contents of that scan looks like. So by scanning the barcode on the bin location first, you can see what's in location STA04. And you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 serial numbers that were scanned inside that bin location. Then he moved over to the next bin location, scanned its barcode. And then you can see we've got, again, about 6 or so serial numbers inside that session, inside that bin location. So this particular session was 4 through, I think it was 1 through 9 or whatever the case is, but you can see those are the serial numbers that were included. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. At the moment, you don't want to have your cap locks on your keyboard activated, as it will invert all of the alpha characters and invert them into the opposite capitalization. At the moment, ActionFlow would balk at that and would have a problem with it. In discussing this with the programmer earlier, um, they have indicated that they're going to modify that. So regardless if it's capitalized or not, it'll still be recognized. So this is a current never warning to never have locks, cap locks turned on. So you can see the second point, we're recommending that you save these and you put it somewhere on your company server as a backup of your scan session. And then a couple things to note here, if you've got your cursor and it's downloading, it may appear to stop, but if you simply just wiggle your mouse a little bit, you'll see that it'll refresh the screen and display all of your scans. So if you're doing, say, 400 or 500 barcodes, and you go, oh no, it stopped at the, at the 25th one or something like that, just wiggle your mouse a little bit and you'll see your screen refresh and display that information. Depending upon the model of the scanner and the number of characters that represent your barcode, you will get somewhere in that range between 500 and 1200 barcode scans on your inside your scanner's memory. If you've done an import from another system, you may find that you have, say, 10, 12 characters as part of your serial number. Then in combination that with the bin locations. So just be mindful that there's a point where the scanner can no longer retain any more scans. You might need to then break up your inventory scans into smaller groups. Still accomplish scanning your entire inventory, but then you would just append the serial numbers and the barcodes from one of your scan sessions into the second scan session here in the text editor, and now you can import it all at once. So be aware that there are limitations based upon the scanner model and the barcode length. Okay, to actually scan.
Hey, Roderick,
yep.
Can you go back to that screen for just a minute?
Sure.
I just want to double check on the steps to produce this. I think he probably opened Notepad, put his cursor on the screen, and then put his scanner on it, and it filled it in that way, and then he gave that file a name. Is that how that worked?
Yep. At the end of this, when I go through that particular scanner, we'll spend a little more time on that, but you're correct. That's how I did it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You put your cursor where the first L is on the first line there. The way the batch scanning works, since Reese opened the door on that one, the way the batch scanning works is your scanner comes with a cradle. The cradle is physically connected to your computer as a USB cable. And when you take your scanner, you're going to scan a couple of barcodes on a piece of paper that gets your scanner ready for the session. You go out and scan the bin locations and the serial numbers one by one. You come back to your desk, make sure that your cursor from your mouse is currently where the L of the first location STA04 is. Put your cursor there, then drop the scanner into the cradle and gently push it down. Scanner should beep at that point, and it'll start downloading from the scanner into the text editor the barcodes. And then, as Reese said, you would go ahead then and save that file. And in this case, give it a name. And so you can see this was scanned yesterday for the A bin locations.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Didn't mean to disrupt your flow there, but thank you for that.
That's right. If you had seen this beforehand, maybe I'd actually, after you reviewed it, earlier today, I made some modifications based upon your suggestions. So I did add that in there later on. Okay, so the first step here was open a new scan session. So this is now going into ActionFlow. So if you follow along in ActionFlow, you'll go to the inventory PO module, you go to task import scan, and here's where you're going to copy and paste from your backup files into the column labeled enter barcode here. And we'll have a little show of this here in a moment here. You can see how that works. Then the first thing I do is double check to ensure the bar location barcodes and inventory barcodes are correct. In other words, you're looking for a pattern. If you notice a glaring error or something is incorrect in your scan, you can either replace it by going back to your text file, copy and paste it back into here, clear out the bad information and put good information in. Or if you notice there's an obvious error, like when I put these scan sessions in there, I noticed there was a couple of extra spaces. in front of some bin locations. And so therefore I manually went and removed them because I know there's no spaces in those barcodes. And so I did that little cleanup there. Then you're going to set the import as of date. So in this case, when I did the import this morning, I actually changed the date to be yesterday, late in the afternoon when I received the files. And then you're going to upload the scan session, and it'll come back and confirm for you that it's successful. So here's what it looks like visually. So if you were to open up your ActionFlow, you would see these same screens that I'm showing here. So here's where you're going to upload the barcodes, where it says enter barcodes here. Then in the lower part of that screen, I'm going to set the date and time that I want this scan session to be as of. And then I'm going to go ahead and click that button that's green, that's labeled that yellow-green color there. And it's going to upload the scans, which you now see in the middle section, and it's going to confirm that my scans were imported. So what you'll note is if you compare what's in the enter barcodes here section to what is in the center section that's labeled imported barcodes, you will see every barcode now is identified with the location that was part of that location scanning. So when we scanned A04 and we scanned the next 6 serial numbers, it automatically said, okay, these 6 serial numbers belong to that location. Then scanned STO A05, same thing there. So basically all it's doing is lining them up. So each serial number now sits right next to its bin location. Now, at the very top, you will see of the imported barcode section, you'll see there's 2 buttons you can click. Update location for present matching items, or update location and status. We'll cover the and status a little later on. Let's just click the first button first here. And we're basically going to say, hey, system, we're just basically getting going here with scanning. This is kind of important when you're first doing your first couple of sessions. And we just want to update the bin locations because we want to start from what we call a known point. So call it ground zero, call it what you like, but each serial number ultimately belongs to a bin location. So it wouldn't be a good idea just to do partial inventory your first go around. Just do the whole inventory and then say, hey, update the bin locations. This way, you know, as of this date, when you click that button, that your inventory is now correct. Now, how long does it take to start changing? Well, the minute your material handler moves a slab and changes its bin location, then of course it's going to change. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the mobile app and a different type of scanner that you use in conjunction with that. So let's just, right now, let's look at update location, and we'll take a look and see what's happening here. Now to the right, after you've done your session, you'll see that you can look at what we call problem records. And if you can see my cursor here, right behind this, click this button if you wish to update bin locations. You'll see there's 3 line entries here. And those line entries basically are saying the following. You're going to look at a problem relevant to present ActionFlow items, not on selected scan. So what it's suggesting is maybe you missed scanning a few slabs that were in that location, and either a bad barcode, or maybe you didn't see it, or that second slab was so deep in that your scanner couldn't reach it. And so therefore, these are areas where you might find an issue with the present option. Notice to the left of that, I manually selected STA07, meaning that the slabs that were in that scan session, those are the only ones I want to look at. It would be nice if we could select more than one. So if I'm scanning A101 through A, for instance, 09, I could select all of those locations and kind of look at them all at once. But at the moment, I can only look at one at a time. Then the second option is incoming or exited. Usually means you scanned a barcode that existed at one time in your system, and maybe someone forgot to pull it off when the remnant barcode went on instead. And finally, third point is, did you scan something that wasn't your barcode? Your ActionFlow didn't recognize it at all. So we're going to go through each one of these kind of in slow motion. And what's real important is the final bullet on this particular screen here If you see errors or omissions or inconsistencies or anything that doesn't look right, you've got to do the legwork, understand what's going on and what the system is trying to tell you. You can't just scan them in, update bin locations, and say you're done. You've got to do the next steps to isolate where there might be an issue. So here we go. So we're going to look at this same scan session, and we're going to look at A07. And you can see over here that we have a situation where these items were not in that selected scan. Well, it could be because those slabs were originally assigned to A07, but for whatever reason, they're no longer there. Material handlers forgot to update it, forgot to move it. So therefore, even though the system said it was in A07, you didn't scan it, and the system is letting you know that there's two slabs that don't match what the system and the scan think is in A07. So that's something to check out. Just make note of those numbers and go take a physical look and see if you can figure out, did you miss them? Maybe that was the second slab that your scanner couldn't reach because it was halfway in the bundle and you couldn't get at it. Okay.
Yeah, one note, Roderick. And so the one other possibility is if you have the star where it says select bin location, if you have it set to star, you can actually do your entire lot at one time, or you can do it bin by bin. And I hear what you're saying, like it'd be nice to maybe do 5 bins at a time. So you can either do all of them or one specific bin.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's look at the next. The next one is incoming or exited inventory. And you can see here something just doesn't quite look right. So my logic says, if I was able to scan serial number 11717, why is the status set to installed? The status would suggest that it was cut and already on an install cart and had already been installed. So something's not right with this one. So this is a situation where something doesn't look right and you've got to look into it, because you would not expect to see that status on a serial number that looks valid. In other words, that serial number to me looks good.
Yeah.
But I've got a status here that doesn't make any sense. We'll show you in a minute how you can dive into that a little deeper. So here we go. Let's dive into that one a little deeper. What you can see here, I'm in the same interface, by the way. I haven't changed interfaces. So what you can do is below where it says item 11717, you can open up the information section and open up the actions. Then if you click the little checkbox to the left of the word history, you can see the life story, if you will, from creation. So when it was first created in the system here, and you can see as it came through, so it was ordered by Ruby, then it was available by Russell, and then there was a couple of scan sessions that were done as well. So you can see in the comment column, it says from scan. So we can see there was a couple of scan sessions here. But what's a little bit doesn't make sense to me is there's a status that's missing. So I'm looking for a little input to see if you can tell me what status you're expecting to see in that column and is not there right now. Anybody have any ideas what that could be?
Used.
Right. So how did it go from available to installed? That would be my question. So if I was the individual managing this process and managing this scan import here that we just did, I would say, hey, hang on a second now. So the questions are, was there a remnant? And if so, we certainly didn't create one because we didn't go through that used step. So from the fabrication tab, one of the options is when I click use, I have a chance of saying I used the entire slab or I created a remnant or two from it. So this looks very suspicious to me, and it looks like somebody jumped the gun and set the status to installed, but it somehow never went through my engineering or CAD or whatever department is going to help me manage that status. So used is a huge status that is kind of stood out to me when I looked at this. So this will be something for this company to look at and say, hey, what happened here? And ask a few questions. So this allows you to look at the history without having to go anywhere else in the system. You don't need to go to the log file. You don't need to go anywhere else. You can do it right from this interface. And it's pretty cool once you see that you have these tools in front of you to make a decision on what happened. Any questions on this interface before I kind of go to the next step here, or comments?
And feel free to put those questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask it.
Yeah, and just to confirm one point, if the history were clear or the solution were clear, you can update that status right there, right from this screen. So it's not just viewing, you can actually correct the status from here as well.
Right. That's editable by anybody who has inventory management permissions. Okay. Let's look at the last one. Scan items not in ActionFlow. So you either have a bad barcode, which was possible, so you can still scan a barcode even though it's slightly damaged, but typically if you find something that you scanned, but the system says, hey, this has never been in my system, I don't recognize that scan, there's a good chance it's actually your vendor's barcode that you scanned instead of the actual barcode that you would have put on there from your company. So that's a quick and easy one to see. You can see right now my list is empty. So this was definitely a good scan session in that regard. So the only thing in this scan session that causes me a little concern is this scenario here. And again, dive into it, figure it out. And on the next scan session, that's probably not going to happen because you will have resolved that. So if the status in this case should not have been installed, it should go back to available. And if you simply change it back to available, then it will go ahead automatically and it'll go and say, hey, something doesn't make sense here. And if you give it the go ahead, it will remove the last entry where the status is the status is installed. Yep, the last entry. It'll remove that and replace that. Actually, it doesn't remove it. It puts it into the void section of this particular serial number. And then it will put available in there with today's date. Okay, now in this case here, if we were to pick the other button instead of the update location for present match, then we would update the bin location and the status of the slabs would instantly change to available. So if we had used that option, it would have automatically done this for us and changed that to available. Personally, I don't like that. That's not my choice of doing it. I'd rather be doing it piece by piece, step by step. And that helps me see a pattern. Because if I do this scan session at the end of next month or maybe at the end of the week, and I start seeing things repeat themselves, it's a little easier for me to get involved and talk to individuals or talk to a project manager or whoever I need to spend some time with. If I use this tool, then in essence, it kind of bypasses my evaluation points. And that's just my personal preference on that one. Any questions on this one before I go on?
Hey, Roderick.
Yes, okay, that's Chad.
If you update the location and status, will it update a used status and put that back to available?
I believe it does, yes. Because
So
it's assuming because you scanned it that it can only be scanned because it was available.
Right.
Right? And again, available and tagged are the same thing. So you're not really messing with tagged. You're basically saying, hey, this status was installed. I was able to scan it. So by default, the logic says it's actually available because you put your scanner on it and you've got a valid serial number.
Right. But I just want people to recognize that there's a delay between marking a slab as used and before it's actually cut, depending on how far ahead programming is of the saw. And so
Right.
you could be affecting slabs that really are quote unquote used from their slated to be used for a particular job. They just haven't been cut yet, and then switching them back to an available status.
Right. So my only response to that, Chad, is, and that brings up a good point, which I didn't mention, but it's definitely worth talking about. You don't delay a scan session and its evaluation. In other words, you don't scan today and then evaluate it on Monday.
Right.
A lot of things could have happened to that inventory between today being Wednesday and Monday when you say, well, I won't have time till Monday to evaluate this. If you do a scan session and you don't set aside time right after that session to evaluate it, you've lost the essence of what this scanning session is all about. So helpful to be able to look back in time and see what it was. But as in the case of your example, Chad, if I've scanned this, for instance, yesterday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, then if I had done my evaluation at that same afternoon, the chances of it being used would be slim. Still could happen, but in essence, you're just talking about an hour's difference between the scan session and the evaluation time.
Yeah, as that button's been there a long time. And you said you weren't comfortable with it, Roderick, and I'm kind of not comfortable with it either. We may just want to remove that altogether. It's sort of like, it's powerful, like, hey, I scan these, they're there, just set them all to available. But
Right.
it could kind of cause maybe more, well, it's sort of a quick and dirty solution that would give people the opportunity to cover over some mistakes.
Right. Yeah, the evaluation step to me is the most important part of the scan session. I have some clients who just hit the scan button, update locations, and get on with life. And it's like you're not. That's the small part of this. And what happens is the evaluation on the first go around can take a long time. We can talk maybe days, a day or two, or hours for sure. But the second session that you do should be less. And if you're still looking at some of that things, you go, hang on a second. Now I dealt with this last week. What's going on here? And that's when you get to either look at the process of what's happening or an individual or individuals within the process that need a little help understanding what's going on here. So these are the types of things that I like as part of the evaluation, but you cannot have a large gap of time between the scan session and the evaluation. So the point I'm making is if you don't have time to evaluate a large scan session, then don't do it. Take it into smaller bites. Maybe do A through G because you got time to evaluate that. And then the next day you can do H through, maybe M or N or whatever the case is.
Yeah, and another thing to kind of reinforce that point. Yeah, it probably seems like a pain to have to go through. I mean, it is a little bit of a pain to figure out where's this slab, what happened to that slab. But if it's clean, there's just a whole bunch of time savings that would come down the road. Like if your people can trust the ActionFlow data and they see there's 4 slabs of Luna Pearl, they can believe that and they don't have to go out into the yard and look for those 4 slabs of Luna Pearl. If the locations are accurate, they can go right to their Luna Pearl and they don't have to look around. So yeah, maybe this would take a bit of time, but if you get this data clean and accurate and people are confident, there's all kinds of other places downstream from this where things are just going to be so much easier and you're going to save a lot of data. So I think the net time saved could be significant, even if this particular part of the puzzle might take some extra effort.
Right. One of the things I should have mentioned probably at the onset, I may update the presentation before Kyle sends it out to you, is this inventory management is not a partial, part-time, I'll do it when I can type of job. Inventory management is a dedicated position that requires your attention at all times to manage it. And again, depending upon the size of your company, so you can basically take a scale. If you're a smaller company, maybe it's a few hours a day. But recently, we had the ActionFlow regional workshop at Blasius in Michigan, and it's a full-time job for 2 people, Monday through Friday, 8 hours on each given day for 2 people to manage their scope of inventory. That's just stone. There's solid surface division, I'd say is a 3/4 of a day for one person to manage. So just be aware that this is not a sundry position. And as Reese pointed out, and I think we both want to make sure that everybody understands the due diligence that's done here pays dividends. Dividends in project management, inventory assessment, looking where things are, inventory values at the end of the month, knowing what your value is. There's a huge dependency, is maybe a better word, of what goes on here to all other players in your company. My opening line with most of my clients is inventory is the blood in your business. If you don't have the inventory managed properly, then you've got a problem with your blood as far as you're not functioning as a human. If your blood is not in tune and you're not looking after your body, no different than here. If this is not managed, then you will have problems with many parts of your company because inventory, without inventory, you sell, there's nothing to sell. There's nothing to look at. And also you can create scenarios where you think you're ordering inventory when you really don't have to because you have plenty of it. You just don't know about it. So that's just kind of adding to Reese's comment about the inventory, how important it is. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at cycle counts. I think we've discussed most of these already, but we're looking at least once a month of all your serialized inventory. If you're a new database and you're just up and going, it can take up to 3 months. That's been my experience, and I've done many of them at this point in time, to go through your scout sessions, to get the inventory to be correct, and to go through all of your inventory at least 3 times to get it to be relatively accurate. Then, in conjunction with the scan sessions, you're going to use the mobile app, which is a Bluetooth connected to a Bluetooth scanner. It's not the same scanner as what you'd use on the desktop, but you're going to use your mobile app, and Bluetooth scanner, and have that with your material handlers, those persons that are responsible for moving inventory from one location to the other, and they're going to update the bin locations as they're moving it. We don't have to wait for the big scanner to come along and do a session. If you use the mobile app and you're connected to the internet, you can use the mobile app quite nicely. We highly recommend using a small Bluetooth scanner as opposed to relying on the cameras on those phones. Some cameras don't work very well. It just has to do with the technology of the particular phone, particular model of phone, the camera orientation. Some cameras, some smartphones, you got to turn horizontal to get them to work. So we've just found a really nice, cute little scanner that's less than $100 that I think works very nicely. And here it is. It's called Netum, and you can order this from Amazon. It's well below $100. You can see the sizes and dimensions there. And this is typically what you're going to use to scan between the mobile app and the inventory. This is called a keyboard wedge scanner. All it's going to do is replace your fingers on the interface and let the scanner do the work for you. And it's going to convert whatever it scans into text. And then in the mobile app, you can hit the button that's going to upload that and push those changes through. So pretty slick little guy and works really good with the mobile app. This is the larger scanner. So this is the one we use with the desktop version of ActionFlow. You can see there's a cradle and there's that USB cable that connects the two together. Again, you're going to go ahead and scan them, and the scans are going to dump into a memory card on the scanner, and that's what's going to basically hold those scans in memory. And then when you mount the scanner back into the cradle, as I say here, the stored scans transfer to the computer via the USB cable to wherever the mouse is positioned within the Word or Excel or wherever you got your mouse position there. But that's where it dumps. So you want to make sure before you hit that little cradle with the scanner that you got your cursor where you want it. If the cursor's in the middle of the screen somewhere and it's not there, you basically will have lost your scan session. So you want to be careful that it's put where you want it. And these are the reports that rely on that inventory being correct, whether it's statuses or dates or those types of things, and making sure that the inventory that you scanned is correct. You've got your grid view, which a lot of people use on a day-to-day basis. You're definitely your project manager, salespeople. That's the quick look. That's a very quick way to see. Also, too, grid view, you can also replace that with, hey, I'm in my job area. I've hit my inventory details section. Now I'm dropping down that little drop-down list, and that will again show you what's available. So you want to make sure that both of those interfaces are reflecting the correct information. And you've got your snapshot report, inventory waste report, financial summary, and inventory cost of goods by SKU class. So these are all the things that rely on the inventory to be accurate and have in your system. And having said that, currently we're also working on a project with a client who just came on board, and we're finding that there are slabs that are in their inventory yard that were never part of the import into ActionFlow. Again, why were they missed? Anybody's guess. But there's probably about 40 or 50 of them right now that we're actually importing into a inventory purchase order against an internal vendor that we're going to use then to bring them into the system so that they're now going to be set up with those new barcodes. And once we print those off, they're now going to be eligible to be scanned. So we found those as part of doing one of these scan sessions in a particular bin location. So this is real important when we're first up and going to kind of go through the inventory. Otherwise, these reports and these grid views would never have seen those 50 or 60 slabs. And that's a little gold mine. In this case, they were all remnants. And remnants, as you know, are very valuable to be able to find quickly and to put on jobs so that we don't always grab a new slab when really we don't have any need to do that. Now's the time to kind of just see if there's any questions here. See if there's anything else. Is there anything in the chat?
Yeah, nothing in the chat right now. I did put the inventory lifecycle presentation Roderick did a few weeks ago into the chat.
Thank you.
I feel like this is kind of and I'll probably send it along with the email for this one too. I feel like they're very much
Yes.
part A and B with managing inventory. So I'll make sure everyone has that complete picture.
Okay.
I'm
going to make a few updates to this presentation and resend that back to you as a PDF, things that were noted that are worth putting in the documentation.
Any questions while we have Roderick or Reese here? Feel free to unmute yourself or put them in the chat. Give you a minute if you're typing.
I'll just thank you, Roderick. I thought that was good and helpful. And yeah, it's an effort, but it does pay nice benefits.
I'd like to thank the folks at Top Priority in Hawaii. They were the ones who agreed that I could use their data to make this presentation. So thank you for that. And my favorite Hawaiian material handler, Mr. Russ, is an instrumental part in helping them get their inventory together on the stone side. And Eric is working hard at getting the solid surface up and going. So he was a bit delayed in getting his shop set up with printer and scanner, but we're waiting for a small little update from ActionFlow to help with some of his barcode issues that we had. And then we can jump on that project and get it done for him. But thanks, guys, at Top Priority.
And they've said that they'll offer free hosting for any ActionFlow client that wants to visit them in Hawaii.
Come on over.
No, they didn't really say that, so I'm lying. But yeah, that's thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
Okay,
take care.
aloha.